I'm so happy to see y'all here on Night School. Welcome to Night School, family. This is every night on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. We hold Night School. Sorry, my son did this, where we break down the most interesting conversations, the most controversial topics, the most intense intellectual traditions. We break it all down here, and we do it in a way that is so much, I hope, more interesting than cable news or any of these other places that do drive-by analysis and superficial talking points. We don't do that. We actually have a conversation. We actually have a breakdown of the issues, and I'm so glad, so glad to be with y'all tonight. I apologize that we have a couple late days tonight, and tomorrow we'll be doing something late. And the reason is because I'm on the road. I'm out here trying to pay these bills. No, I'm not trying to pay these bills. I got some academic talks that I'm doing. Tomorrow night, for example, I'll be at a university doing what we call discussant work in response to a post-colonial theorist who will be talking about genocide in Gaza. So I'm excited to be part of all of that, but it just means we have to push Night School back late because I don't want to miss a single night. Also, I hope y'all enjoyed the Q&A last night. We did a 2.5 hour Q&A last night. Go check it out. I'm trying to told you it was crazy, including this one guy who called in to tell us that people don't read books anymore, and to offer his analysis of Israel-Palestine based on his expert opinion that had no expertise in it. And Hassan the troll, who's been coming on here for a year demanding a debate. I brought him on, and he came on with a fake Louis Armstrong voice and said absolutely nothing, and then pretended that it was something that it wasn't. He wanted it to be one way, to quote the great Marlo Stanfield, but it was the other way. So it said the penguin called in. That is wild. Yo, the irony, Chad. You were reading? God forbid, we don't do that around these parts, man, according to him. So anyway, y'all, I'm so excited to be here with y'all. We're gonna talk about a few stories, man, but I want to start with what I think is a super weird moment. Donald Trump appeared at a campaign rally this evening, and he didn't look like himself. Maybe he did. Maybe the problem is he looked a whole lot like himself. He looked dazed and confused, and he didn't look like somebody who should be the president of the United States. There's all the ideological reasons he shouldn't be president. The whole fascist thing, the whole white supremacist thing, the whole birther thing, all the things, right? But on top of that, he doesn't seem to know exactly where he is. I'm gonna show you a couple clips from this Donald Trump rally that he gave. And I'm sorry for all the weird stuff surrounding this image, the Trump combat knife, the Patriot Addict Deals.com. It lets you know that at all moments, Donald Trump is hustling these crazy people, selling them stuff. But anyway, here's what Donald Trump said. I'm gonna show you the first clip.
It will be, I'll tell you, if everything works out, if everybody gets out and votes on January 5th or before, it will be, I'll tell you, if everything works out, if everybody gets out and votes on January 5th or.
I played it twice for you so you can hear. So he's telling everybody to vote on January 5th. Now, it could just be a slip up. It could have just meant November because, we want people to vote on November 5th. Or he still has January 6th on his brain. Or he's a Kappa, January 5th. If you don't know, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated was founded on January 5th, 1911, on the campus of Indiana University, Bloomington, Indiana, by 10 outstanding great men. Maybe he's the Noops, definitely not. Only thing about him is Kappa is that red. So if he ain't a Kappa, what are you talking about J5 for? He has the election mixed up. Now, I'll be very honest with you. Those little minor mistakes, I don't like to focus on too much because everybody makes them. And every political party, every political pundit, every news outlet likes to make side they don't agree with look unfit for office because they make a little stumble. Barack Obama has said there's 52 or 54 states in the country. People have done these things. Joe Biden made a gajillion of them, although But that wasn't all Joe. That wasn't all Trump did. That was the only thing that he had said. I wouldn't be tripping right now. I wouldn't even be tripping a little bit. But let's look at another Trump beauty.
Talking about, they always go the fake news. That's a lot of fake news back there too. They always mention, it's a way of demeaning. They say, Hannibal Lecter, why would he mention? Well, you know why? Because he was a sick puppy, and we have sick puppies coming into our country. I figure that's a lot. That's better than wasting a lot of words. You just say Hannibal Lecter. We don't want him, but they always sort of say, why would he say that? They do it for a lot of reasons. And whenever I go Hannibal Lecter, you know what I'm talking about. They always go the fake news. That's a lot of fake news back there too.
So now he's talking about Hannibal Lecter, which in and of itself isn't wrong. He has a right to mention Hannibal Lecter, but he seems to be talking about Hannibal Lecter as if Hannibal Lecter were a real person and not from a movie. Now, of course, there's the xenophobia. There's the lies about migrants and immigrants. There's the xenophobia. There's the racism, all of that. But that's normal Donald Trump. He's always saying and doing something racist. It's the fact that now he's mixing that in with something that seems to be off kilter even for him. Here we go. Let's look at the next one.
They always mention, it's a way of demeaning. They just say, anyway, go ahead, please.
Yep. Well, sir, do you want to play your song and then greet a few people, or do you want to? Well, you had said you wanted to close with a specific song.
You're confused right
Let's
now.
do a couple of
more fast questions.
So, Justin, how about a couple of really beauties, and we'll sit down, relax. Let me just give you the bottom line, though. Anyway, go ahead, please.
Yep. Well, sir, do you want to play your song and then greet a few
So
people?
just for context, what's happening here is the woman on stage is trying to lead Donald Trump somewhere else. She's trying to get him off the stage because he's making a fool of himself and he's not making any sense. But he's struggling and he doesn't know what to do. So she says, do you want to play your exit music? So you can exit stage right even. But he ain't trying to go. Instead, and here's where it gets weird. It's not just that he didn't know where to go or that he missed his cue and that she's trying to get him on stage because he sounds like a crazy person. That all happens, right? That's not that uncommon, right? It's that then for the next 35 minutes, Donald Trump stands on stage and plays the opposite of campaign rally music, the opposite of engaging music. He just stands there playing weird songs. And that's why I say weird. I don't mean weird. There's nothing wrong with the music. It's the music for this context. And he just plays songs that he likes and nods his head. Still going.
The baffled king composing.
To be clear, these are jump cuts because I can't play all 35 minutes for you. But this entire time, people are just standing there saying, what the F is going on? Look at these crowds. By the way, the crowds are getting smaller. People are confused. No one understands. And the music just keeps going. He just keeps playing weird music. And everyone's on stage like, please, Mr. Trump, leave the stage. Please, Mr. Trump, we look crazy. Please, Mr. Trump, we lost the audience. But he's like, nope, you're going to get these ballots.
Nothing can stop these lonely tears from falling. Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control. Want to know what you think.
People are just like, what do we do? They are confused and they want to go home. They all want to go home. You know why? Because this doesn't make any sense. But Donald Trump doesn't make any sense anymore. It's funny how when Joe Biden was running for president, all the right-wing media outlets and some of the left-wing media outlets kept talking about how old people shouldn't be president. They were so worried about Joe Biden's mental condition, so worried about his age, so worried about whether or not his fitness for office. It's interesting, now that he isn't running for re-election, now no one is bugging about his fitness for office. No one is saying, oh, well, he's going to be 82 in a month? No one's tripping about that anymore. Why? Because it wasn't really about Biden's age. Now, let me be clear. Joe Biden is not mentally stable. Joe Biden does not need to run for re-election. Joe Biden is not strong mentally. I'm not pretending that Joe Biden's okay. Again, lots of policy reasons to not want Joe Biden to be president. But on top of that, I don't think he's at his sharpest anymore. But Donald Trump is 78. He's not sharp. Not because he's 78. I'm saying he is 78, which raises at least a legitimate question about whether he could do the job. And the answer in this particular case is no. Are there 78-year-olds who could do it? Yes. He ain't one of them. And when he goes on stage and rambles like this, when he goes on stage and looks lost like this, when he goes on stage and does things that are so counter to what he's always done, you got to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? It's unfortunate, but it's also unfortunate that no one is going to say anything about this. The mainstream media doesn't want this to be the narrative. They want the narrative to be other stuff. They want the soap opera narratives. They want the ready for cable news, ready for blogs, ready for social media kind of debates between Trump and Harris. No real critiques, no radical critiques, no left-wing critiques. Both of these parties are right-wing parties at some level, and there are legitimate differences between Democrats and Republicans. I'm not pretending there isn't, but they're both the same wing, different wings of the same bird, and so we're not getting any kind of real analysis there. And on top of it, suddenly the same media that was obsessed with Joe Biden's age and mental fitness is ignoring the fact that Donald Trump has these kinds of weird meltdowns, dazed and confused moments over and over and over and over again on stage. I'm over it. I'm over it. Anyway, speaking of being over things, Vice President Kamala Harris, she appeared today in front of the world, in front of the media, in front of the international community, and she had thoughts. She had thoughts on Columbus Day. As you know, today officially is still Columbus Day, right? People all over this country still call it Columbus Day. They still have Columbus Day sales, where we honor, as I did growing up, or at least the school I went to did. I didn't. Christopher Columbus discovering America. You know, in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. All of that. Well, Kamala Harris did something that U.S. presidents don't do. She stood up and spoke out against Columbus Day. Sort of. Check this out. It's an interesting response from somebody who normally plays it pretty safe. But listen to what Vice President Harris said.
But that is not the whole story. That it is an honor, of course, to be with you this week as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, as we speak truth about our nation's history. Since 1934, every October, the United States has recognized the voyage of the European explorers who first landed on the shores of the Americas. But that is not the whole story. That has never been the whole story. Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past, and we must shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today. It is an honor, of course.
So Kamala Harris steps up and says, hey, we can't tell the story of Columbus without telling the whole story. Whole story here is a story of conquest. It's a story, as she said, it ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from the shameful past and shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today. Now, Donald Trump's campaign, of course, jumped on this because they want to make her into a crazy radical. A crazy radical. Imagine if Kamala Harris really were a crazy radical. How awesome would that be? But it's a low bar here, and she's certainly far ahead of Trump on this issue. But Trump said, or his campaign said, President Trump will make sure Christopher Columbus's great legacy is honored and protect this holiday from radical leftists who want to erase our nation's history like Kamala Harris. That's so fascinating that she's being framed and positioned as the person who is erasing history. No, she's the one who's actually trying to acknowledge and spotlight the history in this moment with this particular story. It's the conservatives, literally those who are trying to conserve and preserve these old narratives that are false, who are hiding the real history, who are erasing history. But here's the thing, right? Shout out to Kamala Harris for acknowledging that this is Indigenous Peoples Day, not Columbus Day. In doing so, you're acknowledging the deep, dark settler colonial history of European settlers to the United States. But I got two problems here. Problem number one, calling it Indigenous Peoples Day doesn't mean anything if you don't give Indigenous people their land back, right? What good is it? What good is it to say, yes, they brought devastation and disease and they took people's lands and blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of the day, those same Indigenous people don't have anything. Those same Indigenous people aren't given reparations. They're not given access to resources. They're literally not given the land that was taken from them. Eve Tuck and K. Wayne Yang wrote an article a long time ago, 2012, called "Decolonization is Not a Metaphor." And it was written to academics who had a tendency to talk about decolonizing their research methods and decolonizing their teaching. But decolonization is about giving land back. And if we're not giving land back, then we're not decolonized. Now, in Kamala Harris's, to Kamala Harris's, not credit, but in a tepid defense of her, you could argue, hey, well, she didn't say decolonization. Exactly, she didn't. She just said, we're going to acknowledge that Native people got screwed. We're going to acknowledge that Native people got their stuff taken, but we're not going to situate that in a bigger conversation about what justice looks like. What's the point of talking about colonization, acknowledging colonization, if you're not going to advocate for decolonization? Saying we need to spread a light on it doesn't help. She said, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading diseases. Perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. And she said we must do everything we can to address the impact of the past of Native communities today. So she's talking about doing something to help Native communities. But if you stole their land, then give it back. It's that simple. If the land was stolen, then it's not theirs. It's not the land of those who stole it. This is an easy one. This is an easy one. That's why Jazz LP said VP needs to solidify Indigenous Day by law and land, right? Otherwise, it's just symbolism. But point number two, the dirty irony of all of this is Kamala Harris might be criticizing Columbus Day, but she's not criticizing settler colonialism. I mean, irony alert. You're literally saying that settlers came to a land and used violence to steal the land of the Indigenous people, and that we must do something to repair the damage that was done to those people who were impacted by the settler colonial land theft. At the very same time that you're watching and endorsing and funding Israel's settler colonial domination of the Palestinian people. How dare you? How dare we? How dare us? How dare we? How dare we Americans do this? How dare we as Americans sit there and talk about and feel good about ourselves, especially you liberals? Oh my God, we got the right consciousness, we got the right state of mind, we got good politics. We don't support. We criticize Columbus Day. Good for you. You criticize Columbus Day, but you celebrate Israeli Independence Day. How do you square that circle? How do you justify that contradiction? How do you reconcile those tensions? You can't. You cannot. You know why you cannot? Because they're irreconcilable. They're irreconcilable. You're either for decolonization or you're not. You're either for justice or you're not. You're either here to protect Indigenous rights and Indigenous land or you're not. And from the way y'all looking and talking and acting, it seems like you are on the not side of the equation. So I'm sorry, y'all. Kamala Harris deserves a slight applause for criticizing Columbus Day, a little more applause for calling it Indigenous Peoples Day. But other than that, if it isn't matched by action here in the States or a change of course in the Middle East, then this is all just lip service. And I'm tired of the lip service from politicians. I want action. It's that simple. Anyway, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back with more Night School right after this. All right, family, welcome back to Night School. Another day, another Israeli war crime. Today, CARE, that's the Council on American Islamic Relations, called on President Biden and Vice President Harris to watch the video of innocent civilians, including children, being burned alive in their tents following an Israeli airstrike in a Gaza hospital. It was one of few remaining places of refuge where Palestinians were sheltering and seeking treatment. And multiple videos, all of them horrifying, have been shared on social media. You can hear the victims screaming. You can hear them wailing. You can hear them in deep pain and extraordinary fear. And in one of the clips, you can literally see at least one person reaching their hand out for help as they were being burned alive. I got to tell you, I'm going to show the clip for a second. If you haven't seen it, it is graphic. So please cover your eyes if you're not ready to see this. I'm only going to show it for a couple seconds. It's worth seeing because of what's at stake here, but it is awful. And I need to be honest about that. So check this out. And the video is courtesy of Saleh Al-Jafarawi. Look at this. You see the fire. There are bodies behind that fire. And when you look at the image, there's a hand there. There's a person here. And you hear him saying there's a man, or maybe you don't hear me saying it in Arabic. Basically, he's telling you what's happening. The National Executive Director of CARE issued a powerful statement demanding Biden and Harris both watch the harm deliberately inflicted on Palestinians by Israel. It reads in part, if seeing a child burnt to death does not lead President Biden to suspend the delivery of weapons to the far-right Israeli government and force a ceasefire deal, then he is as much of a heartless war criminal as Benjamin Netanyahu. At least 10 people have also been killed by Israeli artillery fire at a food distribution center at Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. A couple of things here. I agree with CARE that the president and vice president need to watch this video. They need to respond to this video. What we see here is a disgusting and disturbing war crime. It's indefensible and it's shameful. All true. President Biden needs to suspend the delivery of weapons after seeing this and before seeing this. I don't love the whole argument of, this is a far-right Israeli government, because it implies that once Netanyahu is gone, we can go back to funding Israel. That if we just get a liberal in there or a moderate in there, and there was a time when Netanyahu was framed as a moderate, right? But if we get Benny Gantz back in there, right? I'm saying we as a global community. I'm not Israeli, obviously, but if you get Benny Gantz in there, or you get whoever in there, right? You get somebody from the Labor Party. They're still Zionists. They still believe in the maintenance of this ethno-state, and they believe in diminished rights for Palestinian people. So I don't love the language of, the far-right Netanyahu government. That never works for me. But at the end of the day, that's not what we're dealing here with. We're dealing with war crimes. We're dealing with people. The fact that there's an airstrike at a hospital is itself indefensible. In the abstract, there could be a defense for it, right? But in the practice of this war on the Palestinian people, this genocide in Gaza. Hospitals are being targeted when it's avoidable and preventable and prudent to avoid them. They still won't avoid them. People are sheltering in buildings and they're bombing them. And the fact that children are there just makes it all the more shameful. If it wasn't children, it would be shameful. But the fact that it is makes it even worse. So much anger I feel because of this. So much frustration I feel because of this. And it keeps coming up as Rennie Tay says, Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to defend itself. And the more outrageous, the crime, the more atrocious the moral transgression is, the more the media tries to convince us that these are defensive moves, that somehow Israel is invading Lebanon to defend itself, that they're bombing schools in Gaza to defend itself, to defend themselves. Like, what are we talking about here? At what point do we as a nation, do we as a community of people say enough, enough, enough? Because again, this is it's just indefensible. That's all I can tell you. Nothing is funnier than a good old fashioned these nuts. Jazz said, "Why come the Nation of Islam can't not step in? Why do we keep waiting on the U.S. because they're not doing anything?" Somebody said, "Or the Nation of Islam." I mean, that's another conversation for another time. But it should not be on them to stop this. There's also questions of scale and capacity. But anyone who intervenes with the U.S. war machine, whether it's the Nation of Islam, whoever it is, right? Whether it's private groups, public group, whoever, whether it's politicians, there is no space to challenge Israeli lobby, the Israel lobby, or the U.S. war machine more broadly, and not be demonized, not be castigated. We got to figure out a solution to this. But no one's going to come save us. We gotta organize and do it ourselves, man. It's quite frustrating to see how these things are playing. How these things are playing out. Anyway, we'll take a break. When we come back, I have another update for you, a Diddy update. I know many of you, and I'm not being sarcastic, so many of you ask me for Diddy updates every day. So you're going to get one. As always, it's disturbing. As always, it ain't good for him. Welcome back to Night School. Another day, another Diddy controversy, another Diddy allegation, another Diddy accuser, another layer of depth into this mess that is the Sean Diddy Combs now trial, which is set for May. Today, at least 6 lawsuits, at least 6 new lawsuits were filed against Sean Diddy Combs in Manhattan federal court. 6. The alleged victims are all anonymous. 2 women are identified as Jane Does and 4 men identified as John Does, including one who says he was 16 at the time of the assault. That alleged incident, the 16-year-old, took place in 1998 at one of Diddy's famous white parties out in the Hamptons. The man claims he was talking to Diddy about breaking into the music industry when Combs told him to drop his pants. Out of fear and the power imbalance, the man said that he complied. Getting 16. According to the lawsuit, Diddy fondled the then teen and told him it was a rite of passage to becoming a music star. It wasn't until later the man realized that what happened to him was an assault. The other lawsuits include allegations of rape, forced oral sex, and drugging victims. One of the Jane Does claims Diddy violently attacked and raped her in a bathroom at a party in 2005 for the Biggie Smalls music video for the song One More Chance. They, quote, violently attacked and raped her in a bathroom in 2005 again. There are so many levels and layers to this. 6 new lawsuits makes you wonder how many more are coming. Every day we're seeing 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, one day 120, right? Allegations against Diddy. Are they all true? I don't know. I know they all ain't not true. And the more we learn, the more we see a pattern. I don't know a jury in the world that's going to be able to sit impartially. Well, let me not say that. I think you can find an impartial jury, but you're not going to find a jury that doesn't know what happened, that didn't hear about this. This is one of the biggest stories in America in years, if not decades. So I don't know what a fair trial looks like for Diddy, but I got to be honest with you. While I want him to get a fair trial for sure, I need him to get a fair trial. It's hard to worry about him when there are all these victims out here, when there are all these people who make all of these claims, some of which I do believe are true, most of which I do believe are true. And the idea that as a 16-year-old male or female, I'm just saying male because that's who this person was, you say you want to break into the music industry and you're immediately sexually assaulted and extorted and exploited. And we see men and women deal with this in the industry. And with Diddy, it seems to be a consistent allegation across time and space. I don't know if the steady string of accusers is going to make people think that it's just a gravy train of lawsuits and civil suits and money, or if people will genuinely understand the strength that comes from seeing other people, other accusers come out, that maybe people are coming out not because they want to get money or because they have a lie that they want to float, but maybe just because they feel just a little bit more safe knowing that other people out there are speaking up and speaking out too. That maybe they feel a little bit better about themselves knowing that other people went through the same thing. So maybe they don't feel as cheap and they don't feel as used. They don't feel as culpable, because a lot of times people end up blaming themselves for this stuff. Maybe there's a little less pain in the lives of these people because of the critical mass of voices out there right now. So I hope that everyone out there who's filing these lawsuits against Diddy is also getting counseling and support. I hope the people around them are loving them well and supporting them well. I think that's necessary. It's not enough to just sue, although I'm sure there's some satisfaction in seeing him held accountable. I want to make sure that folk are engaging in self-care. And I say that because when I think about my friends who've made similar allegations against other major hip hop moguls, they've talked about the pain and the trauma afterward. They've talked about win, lose, or draw the lawsuit, you're still left with this mind. You're still left with these stories. You're still left with this trauma. And if it goes untreated, it can eat away at you, man. So I just hope people are taking care of themselves. Yeah. Thank y'all for watching Night School tonight. Y'all, I got a couple questions I'm gonna pick up and then we're gonna roll out, and maybe we'll do more live Q&A because y'all seem to enjoy that. Jarvis said, what are your thoughts about the Ta-Nehisi and CBS interview? Couldn't find any videos for you. Oh no, I covered it. I talked about it. I posted about it. What happened to Ta-Nehisi on CBS was a hit job. It was indefensible. It was unprofessional. It wasn't journalism. It was a low bar. And I hated the optics of it. I hated the substance of it. Ta-Nehisi did a wonderful job, and I'm so proud of him for what he's been doing with this book in particular. I mean, he's an extraordinary writer. He don't need me to be proud of him. He's a giant. But watching him put it all on the line for Palestine it means something extra, to a whole lot of people. James Harvey said, "Did you know that Irish UN peacekeepers have refused to leave Israel after Israel told them to?" I've heard that story. I need to dig into the bottom of it. The question always is, what is Israel's goal with this? Sometimes it's like we don't want the international community to see how we get down domestically, internally. Sometimes it's we want plausible deniability. Sometimes we just don't want no witnesses, right? And sometimes it's nothing, but it doesn't seem like nothing. That's all I'm saying. All right, family. I want to shout out Roy here for becoming a YouTube channel member, Jermaine Thompson for becoming a YouTube channel member. We appreciate y'all. Everybody, keep hitting that join button if you haven't already. In the meantime, hit the like button. Hit the like button. Hit that subscribe button. That's right. Hit the like button and the subscribe button. It makes our footprint bigger, gives us more reach. It allows us to do the work that we do every single day. Please, family, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that join button. When you hit the join button, we develop the financial stability that we need to do this work every single day. So please consider joining the channel as well, becoming a monthly subscriber. If you don't do it through YouTube, you can do it through Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. No monthly commitment. Just make the payment. If you give $1, we're grateful. If you give $1 million, we're grateful. But if everybody watching right now were to donate $10, if everybody watching right now were to drop $10 in one of these sites, we would be able to meet our financial goals for the month. So please consider it. In the meantime, family, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.